So you got yourself a brand new Raspberry Pi and you now want to do some physical computing. The first thing you need to do is to lose some cables because those are going to get in the way. But the very first thing you need to do is to get some parameters off the Raspberry Pi in order to be able to connect to it remotely. So let's see what it takes. So maybe you've downloaded your favorite distribution, or maybe you just used Noobs and downloaded Raspbian, which is the preferred choice of operating system. This is the one you have in front of you. So let's see, how do we get the IP address that we need in order to be able to connect to Raspberry Pi. So let's just hover the mouse over two screens over there and note down the IP address, which in our case is 10.42.0.53. This is the IP address that we're going to be using with the tools that we're going to be seeing in order to connect remotely to the Raspberry Pi. So let's see also another way we can get hold of the IP address of the Raspberry Pi. You can use the terminal up here and type ifconfig. The IP address is going to be displayed right here. Another more modern way of showing the IP address is to type IP add show, which will show essentially the same information as before. Now that we know its IP address, let's remove some cables and unleash the Pi. This is how your Pi is probably looking like very much right now. It's probably sitting comfortably into an enclosure. Let's get rid of the enclosure and let's get started removing a few cables that we're no longer going to be needing. First of all, make sure that you have properly shut down the Raspberry Pi and remove the power supply. After removing the power supply, we're going to get rid of the HDMI or whichever screen you're connected to, the mouse and the keyboard. And this is it. We're going to leave it only connected to the Ethernet cable, and we can now plug back in the power supply, and the Pi is going to be start to boot up, ready for us to remote into it. After a short while, the operating system should be ready. So let's see how we can remote into the Pi. Okay, so now that we have the IP address, the next thing to do is to try and connect finally to our Raspberry Pi. Let's load our favorite browser, which in my case is Chrome, and simply search for a program called Putty. The link to look for is the www.putty.org over here. And here you can click onto the download section of the website. You can download Putty as an executable, or you can download it as an installer application. I very much prefer the installer application. It gives me more tools that I can play with later on. Although at the beginning we're going to be using just mostly Putty, other tools will come in handy on a later stage most probably. So let's go ahead and just download the installer. So I'm going to double click on it, and in its own time it's going to open up and ask me the usual questions that every program will ask when you want to install them. And it's going to be a question of next, next, next. And there we go. We're not going to read the README file. And there it is. Putty is installed. Can be found as a shortcut or within the program groups. Let's just run it. And we're going to write the IP address there where it says hostname or IP address. In our case, we're going to go with the IP address. And let's save our session as Raspberry Pi and hit save. The session is now saved on this tool, so from now on we can just simply recall it by selecting Raspberry Pi and click load. So the next thing you need to do is simply to connect to your Raspberry Pi by clicking on Open. As you try to connect to your Raspberry Pi for the first time and for the first time only, a security alert will come up, requesting you to verify that the host you're connecting to is really the one you're connecting to. In other words, it wants to make sure that you're not going to land onto somebody else's server. In our case, we know certainly that 10.42.053 is our own Raspberry Pi, and we're going to surely hit the yes button and continue connecting to the Pi. As you accepted the message, you're going to be prompted with the login username and password. For Raspbian, the username is quite conveniently Pi, and the password is Raspberry. This is it. That's how you connect your Raspberry Pi remotely with Putty as a client software. In a later video, I'm going to show you how to customize Putty so that the user experience is made nicer. But for the moment, just enjoy connecting to your Raspberry Pi. I hope you liked the video, and that's all, folks. Thank you.